which brings us into the rebirth phase. Now, the rebirth phase in the traditional initiation cultural modality is the phase in which we have now received new information and we are so inspired by it that we want to live it in our life in some way. It is the phase in which we re-enter the community with the new knowledge. And when we start acting in the world with this new knowledge, we're acting in a new way, in a totally non-traditional way, by something that was inspired from within that we bring out. Now, I like to use the acronym TRUST, which I'm going to put right down here. Erik Erikson is a psychologist who said that the first phase after birth is to develop trust, trust versus mistrust. Well, trust is what we're also redeveloping as we move through the betrayal response and give birth to ourselves again. According to Hillman, we never had trust until we were betrayed. Once we got what the risk is, we know we could be betrayed here, and we choose to go forward anyway. That's trust. But until that time, it's naivete or innocence or betrayal, controlling, manipulating, trying to make sure people do it the way I want them to because I can't trust them. Okay? And we are in the process right now of trusting, of going forward, even in the event of not getting what we want in the world. Because we keep coming back with every experience to something deeper, that there's something deeper within us guiding us in our lives, which wants something for us. That's another really good question sometimes to ask, is like, okay, what do you want from me? All right, soul, I get that what I wanted isn't happening. What do you want? What can I do that will fulfill you? Nell Noddings calls this, she has a 4-stage process in intuition. The first stage is receptivity, which we've been spending a lot of time dealing with. The second stage has to do with this shift in will. It's a shift from my will to thy will. Recognize that there is a deeper knowingness inside of me that does know more than me, thank God. And if I can contact that, then I'm on track. And how do I contact that? Nodding says that we contact it through inner hearing, inner seeing, inner feeling, and also through direct knowing. I like, as I said before, I like the word trust as an acronym here to stand for the following qualities. Truth, as in, to thine own self be true. The R stands for relax. We all know how to do that when we're in the middle of feeling betrayed. Now, there's a funny thing about relaxation. When we relax, we become receptive. Another thing happens. When we relax, we release fear. Relaxation is a marvelous tool, one we could all use every day. So we relax to release fear and to become receptive. The U in trust stands for use the tools you have. Both your inner and outer resources. All of these wonderful tools that we've identified. The next step stands for speak. Speak what you know. Take a stand in life. That's when we take that inner and bring it out into the world in some way. Now, I guarantee that once you take a stand in life and you speak what you know, you're going to bump up against someone. Probably your betrayer. If not your betrayer, your newfound friend, it doesn't matter. Whoever it is, there's a real good chance that they will accuse you of being a betrayer, without a question of a doubt. Because, hey, you've betrayed the tradition. You're not doing it the way you used to do it anymore. And people react to that. So then it becomes a question of how do we respond to that? We speak what we know, we take a stand in life. Some people support us, some people don't support us, right? We handle that with the final T, which stands for turn inward, try again. Which means we turn inward, we go back to our truth, we identify our feelings, whatever it is that we're experiencing, we relax and we release the feelings, whatever they might have been. We gain deeper insight, use our intuition to gain even more knowledge. We then come forward again, speak our truth in a new way, and then we turn inward and try again, and again, and again. So there's this continual interactive process that's going on between ourselves, within, and interacting with others. And we become then, for each other, the stimulus to turn inward. And then also the fertile ground to come outward and share new information, new experience, new knowledge, new ways. The word tree is interesting. The word trust, as you remember, comes from the Old English word trio, which literally means tree in Old English. So the symbol of a tree as a symbol of our faith, our trust, our fidelity, is something that we can each hold on to. Betrayal, in many ways, is fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and it's very bitter fruit. We've spent a long time digesting our ancestral bite from this apple. Now it's time for us to eat from the tree of life, and that's the tree of trust. It's the tree which spreads its branches from within the heart of our own being and nourishes us with wisdom from within. As we are able to eat from this tree, we are able to literally transform the tests and trials of the betrayal response, starting with vengeance, and moving on to the shadow, generalization, self-betrayal, through the death of our dream, and fear and control. Just a review, these are the traditional responses. You remember we move all the way through the death process, through the denial, through the anger, through the rationalization and bargaining, through the depression, the sadness, the grief, until we finally come to acceptance. From an inner space of acceptance, we open then to receptivity, to the creative flow within us. We commune with that creative self, using our wide range of creative tools that we've discussed before. We communicate with the creative source within. And then, after we have received new knowledge from this creative source, we move forward in the world with trust. We've said our truth. We've released our fear. We've become receptive to a deeper truth. We've used our inner resources and our outer resources. We've taken a stand in life. We've spoken what we've known. And we continue to turn inward to access this creative source. Then we act in life in a whole new way. Accept, create, trust is the keynote for all of our actions. With that guiding us, vengeance becomes a test to express our truth. To share, to communicate. We have guidelines in psychology on how to do that. We make I statements, not you statements. We listen as well as speak. We engage in a process of curiosity with our betrayer. We are sharing, once again, what it is that we have received after we've gone all the way through the process of trust, getting in contact with the truth from within. And that's what we speak forward in our relationships. In the shadow work, it becomes the test well, let's see. This is the teaching. This is the test. Okay, in the shadow work, the test is to be able to hold both the positive and negative in ourselves and in our betrayer. To own the shadow. This develops compassion, by the way. And above and beyond everything else, it releases fear. When we can recognize that we have both positive and negative qualities, and so does everybody else, life becomes a lot lighter. We don't have to be quite so perfect all the time anymore. It's a great relief to be able to be both positive and negative, because after all, that's what we are. The teaching of generalization is to use our intuitive ability to be able to identify the specific teaching or lesson that we ourselves are learning, and also perhaps our betrayer. So use inner and outer resources to identify your unique soul challenge, which will help you get back in contact with your vital dream, what it is that you're here to do, quote, do on the planet. Why were you born anyway? Remarkably, it seems as though we were born to be lighthearted, at least according to the ancient Egyptians. We were born to enjoy life, to lighten up, to be free, to be who we are. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Freedom is down here. Okay. Yeah. So what happens is when we've identified our soul challenge, we make contact again with our unique self. And our unique self leads to our vital dream or vision. And the teaching is to commit to that vision, to make a commitment to oneself. Now, interestingly enough, interestingly enough, the word commit etymologically comes from the same root word that literally means mission. When we get in contact with our unique mission in life, our sole purpose, it heals the self-betrayal. From being our vital self, our source self in the world, it is our challenge, soul challenge. We are learning to be that in the world, to be free, to be who we truly are. Instead of being afraid to be who we are and feeling controlled. I can't be this, I should be that, and you can't be this, and you should be that also. Instead of that whole dynamic, we have the freedom to be the expression of light that we are in the world. So we transform the tests and trials into soul challenges and teachings based on trust, based on speaking our truth, based on relaxing and releasing fear and receiving the true self, based on using our intuition in both our inner and outer world, based on speaking what we know, taking a stand in life. That's what we do with our dream in life. And then based on, of course, seeking validation from within instead of always going to outer resources. Try again. So we turn within to identify who we are, to gain acknowledgement for who we are free to be in the world. Turning it completely around from looking to external resources to tell us who to be. So that's the shift. And that's how we are then reborn into being co-creators in this world. When we are each free to be who we are, we begin to engage in relationship to each other in a whole new way, in a very creative way. We're on the brink of a tremendous breakthrough in creativity. And the keynote is creativity with cooperation. We're just beginning to discover what that's really about. Betrayal will kill you. It'll kill your relationships, it'll kill your faith, it'll kill your trust, unless you die and are reborn. And that's what we're doing here. Now, just quickly, in the ancient Egyptian mythology, they have something called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really the awakening of the soul into light. And I have a papyrus of it right up here, which will depict what I'm talking about. Basically, what we can see here in this image is that we have the soul represented by the physical body, person, being led through the underworld by a jackal-headed god named Anubis. Now, the Egyptians identified that part of the person that was being led through, not as the physical body, but a part of being called the Ka. The Ka is actually our body image, our idea of ourselves, our impression of ourselves, our persona. That's what's dying and being reborn. Okay. Now the first step is to understand why Anubis, of all of the gods and goddesses in the Egyptian pantheon, is the one to usher the being through at this stage. The jackal is a very interesting animal in that it eats dead meat. Not just dead meat, but the more putrid, the better. Okay. There is an aspect or element in consciousness which is able to digest putrid material. I don't know of anything more putrid than betrayal. It rots inside of us unless we digest it. It poisons us unless we are able to assimilate it into that which is nutritious and that which must be eliminated. Anubis is that element of consciousness which is able to assimilate and digest rotting flesh, rotting material. So Anubis leads us in, and we come to a balance beam. At the top of the balance beam is the goddess Ma'at, goddess of truth. Remember again, the word truth and trust are the same root word. On that balance beam of truth is weighed our heart against a single feather, the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth. So we are taught that the way through digesting this material is to move towards being light as a feather. And when our heart is as light as a feather, we move on. If our heart is not light, then we fall down to be eaten by Amut, this part crocodile, hippo, lion, monster below. We are eaten up by all of our baser animal instincts, our territoriality, our passion, our deepest conflictual emotions will consume us. And so we must lighten up. That's the key here. Now, who is it that's going to help us through this weighing of the heart? We have Thoth, the ibis-headed god. Thoth is a very interesting god in the ancient Egyptian world. He was the god of science as well as magic. Being the lord of science, he was able to observe neutrally, without judgment, exactly what was and what is. We see Thoth standing here keeping a record, fair witness record, of everything that is in the heart, everything that's in the balance, without judgment. Through the development of our own observing consciousness, our own self-awareness, we are able to lighten the balance. Now, also being the Lord of magic, Thoth identifies 3 keys which allow magic to happen. One is the right time, one is the right gesture, and one is the right environment. Right environment we create. We create a sacred time and sacred place in which to observe ourselves. We create the right ritual or the right word also. By choosing the language, are we feeding the fuel for the betrayal fires with shaming and blaming and projection of the shadow out? Or are we fueling our lightheartedness and the truth through positive affirmation, through creative visualization, through release of deeper emotions rather than holding on to them, through acknowledging what we're experiencing, accepting it, and releasing it? So through the right attitude, right words, and the right environment, we begin to create magic. But the key is right timing. And right timing is indeed in the hands of the gods. There's nothing we can do to make it now. That's called impatience. The timing is the test of true surrender. And as we surrender, knowing that the right time will come at exactly the right time, not a moment sooner, not a moment later, then the magic occurs. We are transformed into Horus, the initiate. Horus is a marvelous little story in his own right, in that he was the child born of a betrayal that was avenged. His father Osiris was killed by his brother Set and dismembered and torn. Osiris was dismembered and torn up and scattered throughout ancient Egypt. And Isis went about looking for Osiris, gathering together all of his forgotten parts and pieces. And finally, she gathered together 13 of the 14 missing parts. All but his phallus, actually. Which is very interesting. When we're talking about the shift in consciousness, we're talking about a shift in our creativity, just as the phallus is a symbol of that creativity. This did not stop her from making love with him and becoming impregnated and giving birth to Horus. Horus is the birth of our spiritual self, which lives on something even greater than that which the physical body does. It is the birth of a creative self which is immortal, which is beyond the death pangs of our mortal wishes, wants, desires, beliefs, and attitudes. And in awakening that creative self, as Horus then, we move forward and come in contact with Osiris, who is the true creator. We become co-creators then with God, whatever we think of as that creative higher power, infinite intelligence. And with the assistance of Isis and Nephthys, we do magic. And again, those principles of magic now take on a higher level because we are totally surrendered to the forces of the universe. You'll notice at the very top here we've got this little guy and all these little gods along the top. The real magic is that through Osiris and Isis and Nephthys we become aware of our sochem, our power, the archetype of our soul. We rediscover that enlivening principle which is unique to every single one of us. We each have a different god or goddess, if you will, which we are, so to speak, splinters from or representations of in human form. We reconnect with that inspired, immortal, so to speak, inner self, wisdom, and then receive the new knowledge and are reborn as the initiate. That's what the Egyptians say. So the key is to digest the pain and the rotting, putrid, yucky experiences that we've all had through developing self-observation of thought and lightheartedness and joy, as light as a feather of Ma'at, to give birth to a new creative self, Horus, which can then enter into a co-creative relationship, Osiris, with the real forces of the universe, all of the gods and goddesses which make up who we are. So with those